Uncle Steve with First Blood. Good morning. Whew. Okay. I'm probably going to cut this one a little early like I did yesterday morning. Stuff going on, stuff to do. And good morning, everybody. Okay, so I hope y'all read that headline. Okay, Joe Biden attempted to Arkancide Devon Archer. I got a few things to go through this morning, and I really want you guys to pay attention to this one. So before I dig in, hey, I'm seeing some pretty decent growth over on Rumble. So if you're watching over there, or if you haven't made it over to Rumble yet, check out Rumble. And specifically, I want you guys to check out Rumble because I have a bad habit of getting thrown off of YouTube for a week or two at a time. Yeah, 2, 3, 4 times a year. And if we're ever not on YouTube, we are on Rumble. And then, speaking of YouTube, and I suspect based on some of the other numbers that this is more suppression just because of the topics that we tend to cover. The growth has stagnated. So I want to see you guys, please go ahead and hit whatever you're watching on, hit the like button, hit the share button, help us grow the channel on YouTube, Rumble, Twitter /X, Facebook, wherever it is that you're watching. Go ahead and share it and hit the like button. And I'd like you to get in the habit, guys. In the morning, hey, we cannot have too many friends sitting around the coffee table first thing in the morning. It's 07:30. Get your hot cup of coffee. Get you a good hot cup of get shit done. Sit down with us and start your day off entertained, innervated, and informed. So, what we're doing this morning, we're going to take a look at a pattern of evidence that illustrates a clear habit and brings us to the only reasonable conclusion being that the intent, the objective of Joe Biden for the 2024 election is to win by attrition. I mean, but plain and simple, Joe Biden cannot run on his record. At present, the 2024 election is shaping up to be Joe Biden versus Donald Trump, shaping up to be 2020 all over again, as far as the ticket goes. And in that circumstance, then the the election is a referendum on Joe Biden's record as president and record of obvious corruption. Right? Donald Trump lost in 2020, in theory, assuming the fairest and freest election of all time that had no problems whatsoever. Donald Trump lost because it was a referendum on Donald Trump. So, and all joking aside, no matter what you think of how the election went in 2020, the fact remains there were people who voted for Joe Biden. It doesn't matter how many people actually voted for Joe Biden. The fact remains that there are, in fact, Americans who voted for what you see now. People who honestly believe that World War III is preferable to mean tweets. People who honestly believe that wealth redistribution is preferable to world peace. People who honestly believe that infanticide is preferable to having a nuclear family. Those people are part of this country. You've heard me say it before. People like to say it takes all kinds. It really doesn't. All kinds includes murderers, child abusers, monsters. The all kinds mantra excuses all manner of bad behavior. It is intolerable. I'm going to be doing a show maybe tomorrow with Cameron. We're going to talk about some pretty clear pattern of scandal related to Disney and the habit of the left to excuse bad behavior, very specific bad behavior, and to not only excuse but to encourage it. What we're looking at now, as we're ramping up into the primaries, and this is going to be a first in a long time. It has happened before, but it has not happened in living memory. We're actually going to have a Republican primary and a Democrat primary in the same general election cycle. Right? It is generally the case that the incumbent runs as the incumbent unopposed, but this cycle, there are Democrats running to unseat Joe Biden. They are not happy with the outcome of their election. They got the outcome that they said they wanted, and despite the warnings, despite the very clear indicators that a Joe Biden presidency would be almost unimaginably destructive, that's the route that they chose to go. And the result has been nothing short of precisely what was predicted. Right? We said that Joe Biden would get us back into more wars. We said that a Joe Biden presidency will be economically catastrophic. We said that a Joe Biden presidency would exacerbate all the hate speech rhetoric in the country because of the people that they are. And it's, I'll say this, Joe Biden has not disappointed. He has performed as the label on the tin suggested he would. So as we're going into this election, we're starting to see some things that are unsurprising but troubling. First, there was the attempted assassination of Brett Kavanaugh. A man literally came in the midst of just an absolute raft of federal crimes, which is to say that radical activists were protesting on the front doorsteps at the homes of Supreme Court justices with the not obviously assumed, not clearly suspectable, but explicitly stated intent of altering the course of the court, of altering the decisions of the court. This was in the case on Roe v. Wade, the Dobbs case, right? That's a crime, right? You have the First Amendment, freedom of speech, assembly, freedom of religion, press, and petition the government. Yes, there are historically, and I have some quibbles about the way some of these are worded, but the law does make room for reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions on public speech. Right? But those restrictions, the law does not leave a lot of room to for those restrictions where the content is involved. You cannot restrict speech on its content, but time, place, and manner means you're not supposed to be able to perform performative art inside the post office that prevents people from being able to do business. Likewise, explicitly outlawed is taking your protest to the front doorstep of judges, of justices of the Supreme Court, of jury members, right? Things like that. If your protest, it's one thing to say, hey, I don't like what the government's doing and I want it to change or I want it to stop. And you make a public statement, gather a bunch of people. I've been to several protests. I was at the Capitol in Atlanta after 2020. I was in downtown Conyers with Pitt, Danny, and them with picket signs when our local Board of Commissioners attempted to raise the local property tax by 52 or 56, more than half. Protesting is an American tradition, but you're not supposed to do it at the homes of the justices. Well, that went a step further, and one of these activists actually crossed the country. Right? Remember, they made a big deal out of, he crossed state lines with a gun. This activist went from California to Washington, D.C., and when he was arrested, he explained to the police that he was there to assassinate Brett Kavanaugh. That was the plan, that's why he went there. Robert F. Kennedy is one of the candidates that's thrown his hat in to primary Joe Biden. And Kennedy's, I'll grant Kennedy is getting a whole lot of he's making some real headway with his campaign. He is climbing up the charts and looks like he's actually going to pose a real threat to Joe Biden politically in the primary. There's a good chance that RFK could, in fact, win the primary and be the candidate that Trump beats. But let me say this in the right order. So, RFK Jr., for obvious reasons, has some serious concerns about personal security and safety. And, I mean, here it is. RFK Jr. says Secret Service won't provide protection as they do for every major presidential candidate. And that is the case. On Friday, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. said that he has been denied Secret Service protection. This is from the Post-Millennial, by the way. A resource provided to all major presidential candidates since 1968, when Kennedy's father was assassinated during his campaign for the nation's highest office. After numerous requests to the Department of Homeland Security-led panel, Kennedy said that Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, and guys, if you don't know who Mayorkas is, he's a real piece of shit. I mean, like a real piece of shit, handed down the official verdict, telling Kennedy that protection was not warranted at this time. To tell a Kennedy who's running for office that Secret Service protection is not warranted. I mean, oh? Really? Okay, so the U.S. government just looked Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in the eye and said, "No, man, nobody gets assassinated when they're running for president. You're crazy." Oh. Yeah. And Xander Max says, typically they provide protection 120 days out from the election, but I think denying it to RFK is a special look. Yes. Very well said. Very well said. But that's not the only one. I mean, we haven't forgotten either of the just absolute raft of clearly specious, fabricated indictments coming out against Donald Trump. And then we have this other story. Hang on, there's a couple of related stories that I've got pulled up here, and I need to make sure I use them in the right order. Okay. Okay. Let me know in the comments. Are you guys tracking? Do you know who Devon Archer is? Do you know who this person is that I'm about to talk about? Because you should. And we're going to dig into this a little bit. So, the DOJ was forced to clarify a letter on Archer's jail time just before meeting with White House oversight. This is from townhall.com. And I just wanted to hit you with a headline real quick. DOJ forced to clarify letter on Archer's jail time just before meeting with House oversight. The DOJ's been forced to clarify a lot of things recently. Like the letter where they declared basically all parents in Virginia to be domestic terrorists. And just so this is from New York Post here. Hunter Biden's pal sentenced to prison for role in fraud scheme. So Devon Archer is somebody who has been one of Hunter Biden's business partners for a very long time. And this story goes, a former business partner of Hunter Biden was sentenced Monday to more than a year in prison for his role in a scheme to defraud a Native American tribe of some $60 million in bonds. The defendant, Devon Archer, was sentenced to 1 year and 1 day in federal prison by Manhattan Judge Ronnie Abrams, who said the crime was too serious to just let him walk. There's no dispute about the harm he caused to real people, Abrams said, noting that the defrauded tribe, the Oglala Sioux, is one of the poorest in the nation. And, okay, the Oglala Sioux is one of the poorest tribes in the nation who had $60 million in bonds from which to be defrauded is a whole nother bucket of worms that could be discussed, but that's not what we're here for this morning. He came under the influence of a person he trusted too much and didn't ask enough questions, Schwartz said. Archer, his voice quivering at times, said it was nothing less than surreal that he had been convicted and was facing a prison sentence on Monday. I was doing too many things at once and not paying enough attention, Archer said of his involvement in the fraud. I have deep remorse for the victims of the crime, he said, adding that he was also distraught about the pain he had caused his friends and family. I'm most sorry for my family and what I've put them through. Prior to his arrest, Archer served with Hunter Biden on the board of Burisma Holdings, a Ukraine-based energy company. So, that may sound familiar, but yeah, so Archer wasn't just a business partner with Hunter Biden. Devon Archer served on the board of Burisma, right? So that means that he has been privy to, at least a great extent, much of what Hunter has been involved in the various and several fraud and corruption schemes that the Biden family at large is involved in. No, it's Tuesday. He was in front of the House Oversight yesterday, and there were some bombshells. We now know that the big guy absolutely 100%, at least according to the sworn testimony of an immediate witness, was the big guy. Joe Biden was absolutely the big guy. There is no longer any suspicion reasonably held that the attempts he succeeded, that Joe Biden interfering and using American tax money to extort the Ukrainian government into firing a prosecutor related to an investigation into Burisma Holdings was nothing short of the Biden crime family using the full faith and credit of the U.S. government to extort money from foreign countries for personal, financial, and political gain. Well, so Devon Archer was set to testify on Monday, which he did, in front of the House Oversight Committee. But beforehand, I believe it was on Saturday, DOJ forced a clarify letter on Archer's jail time just before meeting with House Oversight. The New York Post's Miranda Devine tweeted out an update on early Monday morning in the form of a letter from the Southern District of New York, making clear that they don't expect Archer to surrender before his Monday testimony before the House Oversight Committee. But let's be very clear about something. They issued that clarification on Monday morning, but here's the original letter, sent just a couple days prior. In light of the foregoing, the government respectfully requests that the defendant be ordered to surrender at a date and time determined by the court to a facility designated by the Bureau of Prisons to commence his term of imprisonment. The government has conferred with counsel for the defendant about his request and asked that counsel propose a date for the defendant's surrender. Counsel responded with the following position. Mr. Archer believes it is premature to set a report date in light of his anticipated continuing appeal, as well as the newly discovered sentencing error that the government has now conceded. Counsel for Mr. Archer will put in a response to the government's request by Wednesday. The government disagrees with counsel's position that a report date should not be set and respectfully requests permission to respond to any arguments made by the defendant. So, Archer's found guilty. There's a sentencing error. The government committed an error with the sentencing. He is currently not in jail because there are pending appeals related to that conviction. Right? And clearly, he needs to be free, right, at worst on house arrest under guard, so that he's available readily for these testimonies related to the investigation of, let's not be unclear on this, the investigation of the President of the United States conspiring in a massive money laundering and racketeering campaign to start a very profitable World War III. And all of a sudden, that president's clearly corrupt DOJ is saying, hey, why don't you go ahead and come on in and we'd like to go ahead and put you in prison before your hearing. Okay. I can think of some people, one in particular, who spent some time in prison right around the time that we, the American people, really wanted to hear what that guy had to say. Look at you, Ma, jumping the gun on me. Hell yeah. That's exactly what's going on here. Joe Biden sent his DOJ to attempt to murder a witness before that witness was able to testify against Hunter. What's going on here is Joe's plan, the DNC plan, is to assassinate, eliminate, indict, incarcerate, distract, and generally defund, essentially crafting an election of attrition. Joe plans to win the White House by just getting rid of all the competition. He can't do it on his record. He has to do it on race baiting, false promises, blatant lies, and DOJ-sponsored assassinations. If you can look at the January 6th situation compared against the May 29th insurrection, if you can look at the law enforcement treatment of the BLM terrorists of 2020 versus the law enforcement treatment of the Capitol tourists from a single day, right? That comparison alone, the summer of love versus that one day in January, and look at the difference, the disparity in treatment between the two groups. If you look at the treatment of the monstrous martyrs like Ahmaud Arbery, St. Floyd of fentanyl, etc., it is compellingly clear that the DOJ has not just been weaponized kind of in the broad abstract against you. No. It's being very specifically and explicitly used as a weapon to kill people who are inconvenient to the Democrat National Committee. It's that simple. Joe Biden plans to win the 2024 election by merely surviving the campaign cycle. So, I want you guys to do something for me. Call your representatives, especially if you've got a Democrat rep, right? Like mine's Hank Johnson. Try to catch him out in public and just ask him the question. Get your phone out, turn on the video, and ask him the question. Hey, did you support the impeachment of Donald Trump? Oh, Xander Mack. Ahmaud Arbery didn't kill anybody. Ahmaud Arbery was excused of his crimes because he was the right color and on the right side of the political aisle. That was my point there, is the DOJ and the BLM terror group, they altered the track of the investigation and the prosecution. That was a piece of that weaponization. The excusing of one political class of crimes, no matter the circumstance. But you see your rep, ask him, did you support the impeachment of Donald Trump over the investigation into Ukraine, corruption in Ukraine? And if so, how in good conscience can you not have already filed articles of impeachment against Joe Biden for doing the thing, showing the evidence, bragging and confessing to having done the thing of which Donald Trump was accused without evidence of having done? So with that, like I said, I need to cut this one off early, and I didn't. It's 8 o'clock, so 0800, I got to get on out the door. Thanks for watching this morning, guys. We love you, and we will see you tomorrow.